Today is the day that Intel Arrow Lake or Core Ultra 200S launches. I did a motherboard roundup with 5 MSI Z890 motherboards a week or so ago, and at that point I had two processors, well 3 processors, 2 Core Ultra 9 processors and a Core Ultra 5. I now have the full set of Ultra 9, Ultra 7, Ultra 5 and another Ultra 9. MSI sent us some DDR5 CU DIMMs from Kingston in their Fury range. They're inserted in this board, and since then we've received similar memory from G-Skill. Their Trident Z5CK memory, which looks incredibly smart and also a little bit fingerprinty. Very nice. So we have loads of clever technology to play with. And the thing is, I predict here and now that the reviews for Intel are going to be absolutely brutal. Yes, these processors run on less power than the previous Raptor Lake processors. No, the performance is not good. Worse, they are inconsistent. Run to run, it's all over the place. I've had one hell of a week, and I'm going to tell you all about it. I've just finished using this test PC for some benchmark runs. So let's see how it performs. We have a Core Ultra 9 285K processor, and that's installed in an MSI MEG Z890 Ace motherboard. We have the Kingston Fury CU DIMMs. Graphics card is an MSI RTX 4090 Ventus 3X. Power supply is a Seasonic Focus GX1000. It's the brand new ATX 3.1 PCI Express 5 ready model. What else? Oh yes, the SSD. There we have it. It's a Crucial T700, that's a Gen 5 SSD. And we just need to install our MSI MAG Core Liquid 360 AIO and we're ready for action. Arctic MX4. If you are eagle-eyed, you will note that this is the stock mounting bracket. I showed you in the Z890 motherboard roundup that MSI includes an offset bracket for this new platform, which is specific to LGA 1851. Moves the contact point a few millimeters up the processor. As I'm running this processor on the default 250 watts Intel power specification, PL1, PL2 both 250. Temperature has not been an issue. Right then, power, monitor, mouse, keyboard, and we're ready to go. Here you can see the choice of 4 power profiles. As I mentioned, I'm sticking with the stock Intel profile, 250 watt, 250 watt. All I'm going to do is make sure that XMP is enabled, and then I'm going to go into Windows. We can see our processors idling nicely. The memory is running at an incredible 8200 mega transfers. And we're ready for action. So let's do a quick run of Cinebench R23. Just over 40,000 points and just under 250 watts. And the cooler's lovely and quiet. In essence, what we have here is a Core i9 14900K. And now let's shut down this PC and transfer the hardware to a different motherboard. I've transferred my hardware over from the MEG Ace to this MAG Tomahawk. Different SSD. Other than that, all the same processor, memory, graphics card and cooler. We're obviously using the same power supply as well. Okay, let's turn on the power. And we don't have an onboard power button on this model. Oh look, the system appears to be dead. So we turn it around so you can see the I/O panel. We take a USB flash drive which has a file on it. It's a BIOS file, but I've renamed it to msi.rom. I insert it in this port here, and I press the flash BIOS button on the I/O panel. We have fan spin, and we wait to see, as the system reads the BIOS file, if it's going to be happy with it. Is it going to update? Is it going to turn this into a functioning PC? Just below the flash drive in that specific port there's an LED. As long as the LED is flashing, the system is continuing to work. If it doesn't work, it would flash probably 5 times and go out. So this appears to be doing something, and when it stops flashing, the update has completed, and then hopefully we'll have a display on the monitor. Just turned off a light to give you a better look at that very exciting flashing LED. And there we are in the BIOS setup screen. What happened apparently is that MSI shipped a number of motherboards out, hopefully only to reviewers rather than to retail, which only recognized engineering sample processors. They don't recognize retail processors, and that's what I've got, retail processors. Never had that before, a brand new platform that does not recognize the brand new processor until you update the motherboard. Okay, so once you know that, the update's nice and straightforward. The next job is to take our bootable USB drive and install Windows 24H2. That's the latest version of Windows 11, 24H2. If you go to Microsoft.com, that's what you'll find. Installing Windows is the usual chore, so once you've downloaded the Windows installation media and created a bootable USB flash drive, off you go. Select the obvious options for your language and regional settings, sign in to a Microsoft account, you have very little choice in the matter, get yourself connected to a network, wait a fair while, click through a load more options. In my instance I choose to decline all sorts of offers from Microsoft, and eventually you arrive at what looks like a working PC. Hooray! This is excellent news. Then after a little think, the system restarts. And it has a good long think, and an even longer think, and then it breaks. Time after time after time. So there we go. The Windows installation process was working very nicely, and then it wasn't. And this is what we reviewers have been running into for the past week. And I'm sure you'll hear this story from a great many other people, but the essence of the thing is I have my graphics output connected to my graphics card. If you're building a new PC, surely that is what you too would do. And that is where I made the mistake. You are supposed to connect to the graphics output on your I/O panel, your DisplayPort or HDMI, using the IGP in the processor. Let me just try that now live. I was connected to the Nvidia card on DisplayPort, however this motherboard has HDMI rather than DP, so here is an HDMI. And let's see whether it detects a picture, or do I need to restart? Let's force a restart because that doesn't look like it's going anywhere. I can see on the debug display that it's restarting. And let's see what comes up on the screen. And now I should be able to install system drivers, followed by the graphics drivers for the IGP and for the graphics card, connect to the graphics card, all should be good. The snag I had last week was that the Meg Ace had a completely destroyed image coming out of the HDMI output, such that I could not read the screen. Sadly, I don't have a screen grab for that, but I've heard this from at least one other reviewer, funnily enough, on that same model. Again, I suspect one or two people will be saying the same thing. There are two ways around the need to use the IGP. The one obviously is you connect to the IGP, the other is you have a BIOS option which allows you to disable the IGP, and that will force the output to the graphics card, and all should be good. But the question is, would you know this unless reviewers told you? No, you wouldn't. And there we are in the hands of Microsoft. Windows 11 24H2 is doing some strange stuff, and it would seem that Microsoft needs to fix a thing or two. The next step is to install drivers, both those for the general Intel platform and those specific to, say, the networking chips in your motherboard. There are three ways that occur to me to do this, because Windows Update at the moment is utterly useless because it doesn't know about these platforms. So one is to head to the motherboard manufacturer's website, look at the specific motherboard that you have, go to the support page, download drivers, and that will certainly get your PC running, or running better. Two is to install the software that comes with your motherboard. I think they all have some sort of software. In the case of MSI, it's now Center, used to be Dragon Center. That has a live update feature. I've used that for this platform and it works reasonably well. The third way is to use the included driver disk that comes with your motherboard. MSI includes a flash drive with certainly some of the boards that I've seen, and that is a virtual DVD, just like the one on screen. However, I have a fourth option, and that's actually where this driver package came from. MSI and the other manufacturers make servers available to us where they host the latest BIOS updates. I forget how many updates I've done for the Megace. Certainly 3, might be 4. They offered us another update this week, which I haven't yet used. And the update that you saw me install on this board came from that server rather than from MSI's own website. Although I'm quite sure MSI's BIOS would have been fine. So 4 options. You use the update software that comes with your motherboard, and it generally now will automatically prompt you to install it. It's an option in the BIOS which is set to on by default. You can run the driver disk. You can go to the motherboard manufacturer's website, or if you're a reviewer, you can do this very similar approach. Here's the thing, the driver package I have here is beta 1001 as opposed to released drivers. So let's just install this package. Having first unchecked the offer for Norton, missed that once or twice, very tedious. Now the thing is, when I installed drivers, I had a working system. I did a quick Cinebench run, the score was absolutely fine, 40,000 as you saw. That's just a quick run rather than 10-minute run, but it doesn't make much odds if you do a sustained run or a quick run on this platform. And then I ran 3D Mark Time Spy, and the score I got was utterly atrocious, half what I was expecting. The problem specifically looked to be the graphics side of things. I had the latest Nvidia driver installed. I did not have a clue what was going on. What I found was, flicking around inside the Windows power plan, I went from balanced to high performance, and suddenly the performance was fixed. Snag is, it took me quite a while to find this out. All the motherboard manufacturers and Intel recommend that we reviewers use the high performance power mode, high performance power plan to be specific. Personally, I never do this. The difference is not much, it's about 1 or 2%, and the balanced power plan is the default. That is what you, the end user, will start with. You may choose to go to high performance on the desktop. I use that on my own personal PC. It works absolutely fine, but it should not be necessary. And for me, for a few days, the power plan was utterly critical. However, at some point things changed, and I think it's when I installed this beta driver pack, when I was doing motherboard switches from one MSI to another. Suddenly everything was absolutely fine. I thought that Windows 11 24H2 was utterly broken on this new platform. I think it's something more subtle than that. I think it's some driver, possibly to do the management engine. But something somewhere is doing something very strange, and I'm sure you'll hear that from a great many other reviewers as well. With all those drivers installed and the power set such the screen doesn't go dark while I'm talking, I'm just going to install the Nvidia drivers for this RTX 4090, and then we ought to be able to switch from the integrated IGP to the DisplayPort on the graphics card. Hooray! Success! We now have a working PC. Let's just get this monitor out of the way and I'll talk to you a little bit more. Now you might easily have the impression that I'm a blithering fool who hasn't got a clue what's going on, and I leave that to you. However, I am quite sure many other reviewers are going to give you a similar tale of woe to me, but I suspect those tales of woe will differ. This is one of those instances where, once you've watched Kit Guru's take on this new platform and processor, I recommend you go and look at what other reviewers have to say. Gamers Nexus, obviously, Hardware Unboxed, no doubt, but also look further afield. I've spoken to at least 6 reviewers in the past few days, all of whom have had different stories where things just have not gone well. It comes down to motherboard manufacturer, but the common thread seems to be Windows 11 24H2. And the thing is, I don't think Intel is confident about what's going on. And the reason I say it is that something quite extraordinary happened to me just the other day. Friday afternoon, I was asked whether I was available for a call with Intel as a catch-up. How are you getting on? What's going on with your testing? What have you found? Fair enough. That's unusual. You don't generally get that immediately before an embargo lifts. I spoke to Intel Tuesday afternoon in the UK. It's Tuesday morning in America. They're on the West Coast. I was expecting it to be a group of us logging into a Teams call. And it was me and 7 people from Intel, including Robert Hallock. Dan Ragland, who I spoke to a while ago about DDR5 memory on Kit Guru, he was there. We had some marketing people. We also had various technical people. It's quite clear Intel's taking this very seriously. And judging by the look in their eyes, they were confused. Now, one of the things I was talking about was the Windows power plan, which was a problem for me and then wasn't a problem for me. So God help them, frankly, getting to the root of the matter. As I say, I've come to the conclusion, I think Windows and something to do with drivers. I think that's what's underlying things here. But I've never once been in a call with a group of Intel people on my own. I don't know if anybody else will tell you something similar. I know immediately after my call, a bunch of Europeans were talking to Intel, something like 24 Europeans. So whether anyone else had a one-on-one with a panel of Intel, don't know. I don't think it's that I'm special. Perhaps I just moan louder than the rest. But Intel right now, I don't think is quite clued up on what is going on. Anyway, shall we look at some performance figures? In Cinebench 2024, this is single-threaded performance, and we have the Core Ultra 9 285K at the top of the chart, in a dead heat with a Ryzen 9 9950X. Interestingly, the Intel processor is pulling 45 watts, measured through software, and the Ryzen 9 is pulling 58 watts, also measured through software. A short head behind that, we have the Core Ultra 7, and basically on the same power draw. The Core Ultra 5 falls back a further few points, that is using significantly less power, 37 watts. And you'll notice that the Core Ultra 9 is beating the Core i9 comfortably, and the Core Ultra 5 beats the Core i7. The Core i5 14600K falls back by a fair amount. Cinebench 2024 multi-core, top of the chart by a clear margin, Core Ultra 9 285K running on 250 watts. It's a better score than the Ryzen 9 9950X, however the AMD processor is only pulling 200 watts. Also, I don't think the memory makes any difference here, but the new Intel platform running DDR5 8200, where the 9950X was on DDR5 6000. Moving on, Geekbench 6 multi-core. Again, it's a clear win for Intel. I'm quite convinced these applications are playing to Intel's strengths, but the win is the win. Also worth noting, second in the chart is the Core i9 14900K, drawing almost exactly the same amount of power. Again, the new Ultra 9 285K is running on faster memory, but it wins in this preliminary chart. I am going to have to do more testing, of that there is no doubt. Core Ultra 7 265K does a good job, and the Core Ultra 5 245K beats the Core i5 14600K comfortably. Moving on to Cinebench R23 multi-core. Top of the chart by a narrow margin, Ryzen 9 9950X on 200 watts. Close behind that we have the Core Ultra 9 285K on 250 watts. Intel's using more power in the default mode and it's performing slightly worse. Further down the chart we can see the Core Ultra 7 265K beats the Core i7 14700K, and we see an effective tie between the Core i5 14600K and the Core Ultra 5 245K. Ada 64 memory latency. I feel this chart is part of the problem that Intel is currently facing. The new DDR5 8200 has horrendous latency, but it's not just this specific memory, it seems to be the platform as a whole. On the other hand, memory bandwidth with the DDR5 8200 CU DIMMs is absolutely superb. The rest of the chart is mainly populated with DDR5 6000. There's a single figure in there for DDR5 8000. However, some retesting is certainly required on the other platforms. Take this as a preliminary figure. The new memory is doing something quite peculiar. And we finish with 3D Mark's CPU profile. The win goes to Core Ultra 9 285K. Tight behind that we have the Ryzen 9 9950X using significantly less power. And then we have the Core Ultra 7 265K running on the same 250 watts as the Core Ultra 9. The Core Ultra 5 245K is in the middle of the chart, and it's a couple of places ahead of the Core i5 14600K. And that's the end of the performance charts, and do please take those charts I've just showed you as preliminary data. They are incomplete, but they do show this platform certainly has some merit. It also has a whole bunch of problems, but gaming is the thing I really need to dive into. I need to retest this platform, update BIOS. I'm sure there'll be driver updates. I wouldn't be shocked if Windows gets updated. We've got Intel 14th gen to look at. I want to see what memory will run happily on 14th gen these days. And we have AMD, particularly Zen 5 with the newer Giza, running on DDR5 8000. And that will all be with this RTX 4090 from MSI. Lots of stuff to retest. So, do I recommend this platform? Obviously not. We're going to have to check back on that. However, it's way early to offer a verdict on these processors or a score or a buying recommendation. For the time being, I'm going to stick with what I've said so far this year, which is wait for AMD to launch the 3D version of Ryzen 9000, and then we can check back. So, what do I have to say about Intel Arrow Lake? Funny thing is, rather than pros and cons, I've actually got a bunch of questions. It's advice, really. When you're watching or reading other reviews of this platform, ask yourself these things. Is the reviewer using Windows 11 24H2? If they installed Windows 11 24H2 from scratch, rather than carrying over an SSD from another platform, was the installation easy? Are they using core isolation? That's the default. It's also been called VBS. It means everything runs in a sandbox and it can affect performance. It particularly affects game performance. Various game launchers regard core isolation as some sort of malware. So you want to be clear about that. Is the Windows power plan running on balanced or high performance? That was a big point to me a couple of days ago. Now I don't think it much matters. When it comes to comparison data for this platform, both for AMD and for Intel 14th gen, was that also running on Windows 11 24H2, or is that older data from Windows 11 23H2? Any comparison data, was that running on the revised power limits? Intel has cut their power limits quite significantly. Are we comparing 250 watts on this platform with 300 or 350 watts on 14th gen? Or is the playing field relatively level and up to date? And when we're talking about a level playing field, we need to consider memory. You need to be aware what reviewers are using. So this is DDR5 8200 CU DIMMs. DDR5 8000 I think will be quite common on this platform. AMD Zen 5 can also run DDR5 8000. However, Zen 4 processors may be running on DDR5 6000. Obviously older platforms use DDR4. So you just want to be clear about these things so you know what people are talking about. I think I have now moved from complete confusion and quite a bit of annoyance to a happier place. But this platform, it's been released way ahead of time. It is not ready for the mainstream. If you buy a pre-built PC using Intel Arrow Lake Core Ultra 200S, obviously you can go back to the manufacturer of the PC if you have any problems. If you're doing a home build, I hope this video has been some use to you. Do check back. There's going to be more on this subject for certain. Head over to kitguru.net to read our news and reviews, and we're on TikTok.